Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 125-122 over the LA Clippers to improve to 34-21, maintain their number 5 spot in the West. And dare I say, one of the most Lakersy wins of the season. That the Lakers tend to have one of two types of wins. It's either a hot start that tapers off throughout the course of the game and often goes into crunch time, or it's the inverse of a slow start and they progressively make a second half or third quarter comeback. Tonight was the former. Lakers get off to an incredible start, one of their better recent quarters after missing their first shot. Like Luka has an easy layup, he misses it. They make 16 of their next 18 shots, and Austin goes off, LeBron goes off, Luka goes off. Luka scores 15 of their final 18 points in the first quarter. And just an incredible offensive display from LA. Also had some incredible defense in that quarter with the blitzing of Kawhi Leonard, forcing the ball out of his hands, forcing the other Clippers to be playmakers and finishers. They forced him out of bounds twice, which you just don't really see that from a player of Kawhi Leonard's caliber, of him retreating and stepping out of bounds. So just really remarkable first quarter from LA that showed their ceiling on both sides of the ball. They're up 41-29. And then the rest of the game was very up and down, and they ended up pulling this one out in crunch time, though there was a near disaster there. LeBron turned the ball over. Nick Batum got a semi-contested three at the top of the arc to tie the game. He ended up missing it, but Lakers got the win. We finally see what this group looks like with the full squad, and there is a lot to dive into, a lot to break down. For those who are wondering, I have been having some camera issues lately, and I tried switching back to my original camera. It is not turning on right now, so this is my computer webcam. Also is having issues with my monitor, so having a bunch of technical issues right now, but so that caused about a 20-minute delay here, but was going to go live no matter what, and so apologies for the reduction in the typical camera quality here, but working through this, and hopefully we'll have it resolved by the next stream. But shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate everybody tuning in late. We are going one of our later lives of the season, and but let's get into it. So Buha's big picture is first look at the full squad, and so some facts with this game for the Lakers. Just the second time this season that the Lakers have had nobody on the injury report, a clean bill of health. Just the third time they've had their entire rotation in a game, I believe, this season, and the 11th time they've had the big three together. So this, and also now factoring in, like, they made the Gabe Vincent, Luke Kennard trade. So the previous game that they had everyone available was back in November against Utah. So now the first time with Luke Kennard and Luka playing together, first time with the full rotation and what this group can look like. So I think there was a lot to take away. Offensively, I mentioned it at the top, but I thought the Lakers, especially in that first quarter, but also for different portions of the first half and the beginning of the third, and then parts of the fourth, I thought there was some incredible ball movement tonight, and an overall zip and verve and pace with the offense. I thought incredible shot making from Luka and Austin. Those two guys combined for 67 points, and I'm going to touch on them more in the notable performers section. But I think we finally started to see what the Lakers' offensive potential can be. And there was a lot of off-ball actions tonight in a way that, like, the Lakers have been progressively adding into their offensive repertoire over the last few weeks or so, but really the last couple of months, but it's just also been dependent on like who's available. But we saw tonight several off-ball actions, including some flares, which they have been running for Austin and Gabe and now Luke, Rui, and like just they're better 3-point shooters. But we saw some flare screens, we saw some baseline screens, we saw a lot of wide pin downs, and I just really liked. Sometimes it would be like sort of a decoy action into just a pick and roll, or maybe they'd go through a couple actions and end up with a pick and roll, and just can Austin or Luka beat their man off the dribble? Can they hit a contested three? Can they create some form of separation? But I like the process of how they got to a lot of those shots. It progressively devolved throughout the course of the game. So it is something that the Lakers are going to need to reinforce in film and look at the first quarter and see what they can take moving forward, more frequently. But I really liked a lot of what we saw offensively from this group. To me, this was probably an A- offensive performance, especially factoring in the caliber of opponent defensively. The Clippers just beat. It's worth noting, it was the second night of a back-to-back for the Clippers. They just beat the Nuggets last night, but the Clippers are a really good defensive team, both with their personnel and also with the schemes that Ty Lue runs. So I thought the Lakers eviscerating them the way that they did tonight. I mean, they shot 52% overall, 55% on threes. Like, that was a huge weapon. How many times have we seen the Lakers shoot above 50% on threes? But not only shooting above 50%, but hitting 17 of them. That's a huge number for them. Also getting to the line 25 times, making 80% of them, and only 12 turnovers. I've talked about it. You want 0 turnovers, you want single-digit turnovers, but realistically, I think a realistic goal should be like 12 to 14. 14 is on the high side of like acceptable. 12 is relatively low. So you take 12, and Lakers had a few early. I think they had 6 in the first quarter. So even with how their offense was moving, they were still like turning the ball over a little bit and cleaned that up over the final 3 quarters. And then defensively, I mentioned it too, but I thought the blitzing against Kawhi, especially through the first like quarter and a half, was awesome. And the way that they just sort of spooked the Clippers, and the Clippers eventually countered it, but it took them a little bit to counter it and for Kawhi to get comfortable against that coverage. But I thought that was smart, and it was something we saw them do against James Harden going back a few weeks ago, and also something we saw them do against Jamal Murray. So JJ continues to push a lot of the right buttons defensively and approach it from a more creative and strategic standpoint. Also mixed in some zone, as we've seen them, they've been leading the league in zone over the last few weeks, and also some aggressive helping. So one thing that the Clippers really tried to do, and it's funny because he's a former Clipper and played with a lot of or several of the guys in this era, was like they tried to really target Luke Kennard, especially like anytime Kawhi or Ben Mathurin had the ball. It was like, where's Luke Kennard? Bring Luke Kennard into the fray. So the Lakers mixed up some coverages there where sometimes they were trapping or blitzing that. They even had one possession where they started with Luke Kennard on Kawhi to see, and they actually ran a screen, and Luke Kennard ended up getting off of Kawhi. And that might have just been like a sort of transition matchup situation, but I thought that was kind of funny. But, they were doubling with Kennard, or to support Kennard, and then also similar to how they've guarded guys like Ant and different guys, like really aggressively helping, where basically like the next man over is zoning up and sort of like ignoring their man, and is right there in the gap for if you're going to try to drive and create that separation, you have someone in your path. So I thought there's some good things there. That said, there was also a lot of bad tonight defensively. Transition defense continues to be a weakness for this group when they're at their worst, and just honestly an indifference in transition defense. And it's sort of like they kind of get back, but then just they'll like get back, and then they'll just like part an opening for someone to drive, or they'll get back, they won't match up, or they'll give up an offensive rebound. Like, it's just bad transition defense tonight. The boxing out was also rough. The Clippers had 10 offensive rebounds, and I don't have the second chance points in front of me, but I knew, I know that was an advantage for them tonight. And I thought the overall rotations for the Lakers in terms of just rotating to closeouts and also rotating low man, et cetera, like it was a bit rough tonight. I would say inconsistent at best. So, but overall, like I mean, we're going to touch on the starting group. The Lakers finally went with the right starting lineup, and it only took them 55 games. But with like the way that Luka played tonight, the way that Austin played tonight, LeBron's passing, and the starting group getting reps. Not a great bench night. Didn't love a lot. Like, I thought the bench was pretty underwhelming overall. Like, just felt like we saw some progress of some of the things that have been working for LA recently, some of the things that have been trending in the right direction. And now it's about, as JJ likes to say, having more reference points, having some of this stuff on film, having some of this stuff in data, and just learning from it and continuing to refine it and fine tune it. Right. And so I think, like, all things considered, a solid win for LA. I think based on some of the context with this game of second night of a back-to-back for the Clippers, they obviously traded their second and third best players in James Harden and Ivica Zubac away, even though they just beat Denver last night. And also John Collins left late in the first half, did not return. Kawhi left in the fourth quarter, did not return. Like, the fact that they were trading blows with this Clippers team without Kawhi, I thought that was a little discouraging. Like, they should have put them away and they just couldn't. But with all that, that's kind of why I said it's a Lakers-y win, where it's like a close win that you could say is like a solid win, but you could also say, hey, they probably should have beat this team 8, 10, 12 points, especially after Kawhi went out. But that was just not how things played out. But like, the Lakers at this point, with how the standings are in the West, Denver and Minnesota both won tonight. You need to just rack up wins, and it was not the prettiest win. And again, could have been a disaster, or at least gone into overtime and just been a situation that they should have avoided. And they were able to ultimately prevail, though. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with Luka Doncic. 38 points, 6 rebounds, 11 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, 2 turnovers. Just like, this dude just missed the last 4 games and was on a minutes restriction in the All-Star game, but did not miss a beat. I mentioned it. He missed his first shot, which was a layup, and it was an interesting night for Luka in terms of like 11 for 25 shooting is not as efficient as you would like to see, but did take care of the ball. Again, only 2 turnovers, and also shot the ball really well on threes, 8 for 14. So it was actually inside the arc, where he went just 3 for 11. And it continues this like weird trend with him, where he's had a lot of games where it's like he's either hitting everything from deep and not as efficient inside the arc, or the inverse, he's hitting everything inside the arc and his 3-point shot isn't falling. But I mean, he carried the Lakers offense again. I mentioned 15 of the final 18 points in that first quarter, had 17 points in the first, and several big plays down the stretch of this game. Lakers really ran a lot of high pick and roll with Luka and DA. That was the bread and butter. And one of the things I really liked, and I think is going to be a weapon for the Lakers moving forward, is they started playing these lineups with Luka, Rui, and Luke Kennard. And again, first reps with Luka and Luke Kennard. And I loved it. I think we talked about it a little bit on the last episode of Buha's Block, where looking at parsing through the lineup data, I think there's some clear trends in terms of the types of lineups that have worked. And I think that there needs to be a level of staggering Luka and LeBron, because that partnership has just not, looking at last season, in the regular season, the playoffs, and this regular season, there's just like been a bit of a limitation with those two together, especially defensively. So if you stagger them a bit more, which the Lakers did to a degree tonight, and you lean into these like Luka offensive groups with either small ball or Jackson Hayes at the 5, plus Luke Kennard and Rui. I just don't know how you defend that. And there was one play, I believe this was late in, kind of like midway to late in the second quarter, where the Lakers are in early offense. Rui's in the corner. I believe Rui's in the corner. It was Rui or Luke. I don't remember which one. One was on the wing, one was on the corner, and Luka's at the top of the arc. And Luka hits the ball ahead. I want to say it was maybe Rui on the wing, Luke in the corner. Rui swings it to Luke. Clippers defender closes out to Luke. Luke kicks it back to Rui at the wing. The defender goes over to Rui, and then Rui kicks it back to Luka, who's just wide open because the Clippers are in panic mode because now someone like the low man is rotating out over to Luke, and they're freaking out because they're like, we have two 45+% shooters wide open here between Rui and Luke, and then they leave Luka wide open, and Luka cashes the 3, and it's like, these are the types of like, and that's Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart. You're not getting the same defensive reaction. If that's Jared Vanderbilt, you're not getting the same defensive reaction. So I really liked some of the second unit groupings that JJ put together around Luka. And I thought it really leaned into, if you give Luka the proper spacing, he's just impossible to defend. And then you couple that in tonight, made 8 threes and was unguardable from deep. And like, then you just see, I mean, he made half of the Lakers threes tonight, and then also led to several of their 3-point makes with his passing. So I thought, especially with the context of coming off of the injury, coming off of the absence, I thought this was a monster game from Luka. Really, again, I'm sure some people will nitpick the shot selection or the usage in the fourth quarter. I think the efficiency could be a little bit better, but outside, like at that point, I think we're nitpicking it a little bit. Dude had 38, 6 at 11, and again, really carried the Lakers offense for large stretches of this game. Then Austin Reaves, 29 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Austin scored the first 7 points of this game, and I think like this isn't going to go on the Austin ledger in terms of like this was not an OKC or a San Antonio type opponent, but he had Derrick Jones Jr., who just go back a couple years and that a couple years ago in that role that he played for Dallas as their primary guard stopper / wing stopper, depending on the matchup. He had Derrick Jones Jr. Like Chris Dunn was on Luka, Derrick Jones Jr. was on Austin. Austin was cooking him tonight. He did also face Chris Dunn when he was on and Luka was off. Though they did try to stagger the minutes to keep Dunn on Luka as much as possible. And then he had some Mathurin, he had some Miller. So like this was a pretty athletic. Again, it was not OKC's defensive crop, but this was a pretty athletic and defensive minded group of players that Austin, I thought, fared really well against. Started the game 8 for 10, ended up going 9 for 15 overall. Had a couple turnovers in the second half that I'm sure he'd want back. But I think one of the key developments here that is going to be how this all works with the big three is like Luka's, of course, first in the pecking order. Luka is the straw that stirs the Lakers drink, and he's going to have high usage. He's going to be putting up his 32 plus every night, the 8+ assists every night. And like that, like Luka, that there's a stability and a reliability there that you're getting with Luka. But with Austin and LeBron, I think one of the things we have seen a bit as the identity of the big three has crystallized, especially more so this season, is Austin is the number 2 scoring option and LeBron is the number 2 passing option, because at this stage of LeBron's career, I think Austin is the more effective and efficient scorer. And I mean, the numbers back that up. Just on the season, he's averaging more points than LeBron and has had a higher usage and has done so very efficiently. And so I think the Lakers leaning more into Austin as a scorer and less of him as a passer, and leaning into LeBron as a passer, because LeBron is a much better, like Austin is a good passer, and Austin has even, I think, turned into a great passer. Like he's had great passing games. I would say overall he's a good passer. LeBron, of course, is a great passer, one of the best passers of all time. And that is something that even as he has lost some of his athleticism, he has aged a bit and not been quite the same offensive force, the passing has not gone away. And so I think LA leaning more into LeBron as a facilitator and LeBron as someone who is finding guys in transition, is finding guys on lobs, is finding guys out of the post. Like that's been a real weapon for LA. 5 straight games now of double-digit assists for LeBron. First time he's done that since I believe January 2020. And just the second time in his Lakers career, he's done that. And the only Laker to have 5 consecutive games of double-digit assists is Magic Johnson. Lakers put that out during the game. So just like I think that's the way to kind of balance this out. Like, of course, ideally, Austin and LeBron are both like 25 points. Maybe Austin's 5-6 assists. LeBron is 8-9 assists. And like you get the balance that way. But I think realistically, it's probably going to be LeBron more as the third option as a scorer, but as the number 2 option as a passer, and Austin as the number 2 option as a scorer and the number 3 option as a passer. I think that's leaning into both guys' strengths. So to bring up LeBron, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 11 assists, 1 steal, 3 turnovers, 5 of 13 shooting, 1 for 3 on threes, 2 for 2 at the free throw line. So a couple notes with LeBron. He was downgraded to questionable a few hours before the game. So it was like the Lakers were healthy for 24 hours. Then all of a sudden there's this doubt with LeBron, and he ends up playing. He was a game time decision, went through his pregame warm up and decided to play. But he also, JJ said after the game, was dealing with a migraine. And that was something that he had to battle throughout the game. So with that context of LeBron said afterward that he dunked in practice yesterday and felt okay after the dunk. But like a couple minutes later, his knee started to swell up and hurt. So that was something that he then said like got worse this morning. So with that context, like I think it adds a little bit more to some of LeBron's, I would say like offensive struggles from a shooting perspective, right? Just went 4 for 10 on 2s, 1 for 3 on 3s. I don't think quite had the level of him, like especially compared to the game he just had against Dallas right before the break, did not look like the same version of himself. But the passing was incredible. He had 11 assists, matched Luka for the team high in assists. He had the incredible play to DeAndre Ayton where Austin gets the rebound, hit ahead to LeBron, immediately pivots and hits DA for the lob. So I think again, like there's no like hard and fast rule as to like how the offense has to function necessarily, but I think the Lakers are starting to lean more into Austin is more of a scorer, LeBron is more of a passer. That's how you find the balance there. And there are going to be matchups like against OKC where the Lakers are going to need LeBron to play bully ball, play more out of the post. And maybe that's a matchup that Austin isn't as effective or efficient in, right? And you have to compensate that with LeBron doing more. But I think this is going to be the general hierarchy of, offensively. I think in general, like Luka, Austin, LeBron from a scoring perspective, and then Luka, LeBron, Austin from a passing perspective. LeBron did have the turnover late, and he's had several of these where LeBron is the inbounder late, sometimes could be a little shaky there. And it was just inexcusable turnover that nearly didn't almost cost the Lakers the game, but almost sent it to overtime, which could have potentially cost them the game. But otherwise, like I will say, I really liked his effort and engagement and activity, more so in the first half than the second half. But I did think LeBron set a tone. Like I thought had a couple of nice deflections and had a steal that led to a transition opportunity early, and like was playing with a certain force that I think is important. So it did feel like he came out of the break with a certain level of energy, but it's just, I don't know. It's hard to factor in like how much the knee and the migraine played into his performance tonight, but it does feel like it was at least a little bit. Then we get into the rest of the starters. Marcus Smart. So Marcus finally gets the start. He finally is upgraded to the 5th starter spot, which only took 2/3 of the season. Does not take a shot for the first going on like 41 minutes of the game or so, 41, 42 minutes. Hits a late shot clock corner 3, follows that up with that's in the right wing, right in front of the Lakers, or right corner, right in front of the Lakers bench, hits a right wing jumper on the next possession, ends up being a long 2, but that's an and 1. Then follows it up with another big jumper with a couple minutes left, another and 1. He misses both free throws, but Marcus just like he's a big game player. He's a big moment player, and he has had, I mean, at this point, I would say over a half dozen of these fourth quarter performances where he hits several big shots down the stretch for the Lakers. And like, he could be ice cold for the entire game, or in this case, just didn't take a shot and just, he has the stones. He hits some big shots and made some really big plays. And then defensively, I thought, so JJ was asked pregame about the starting group and if he liked or what he liked about having Marcus and Jake out there, and if he preferred having a defender next to the big 3. And it was sort of trying to get at like, who's the 5th starter, who's going to be starting. And one thing that JJ said that he liked about having that defender out there was that he felt like the previous starting group put a lot on Austin defensively to basically be the primary perimeter stopper, and that they wanted Austin in more of a secondary role. Now, I found that a little interesting because he conveniently left out like the Rui part of it, where like Austin is basically the backcourt stopper, but Rui's been the front court stopper, and that was not working either. So I guess because it was ultimately leading to Rui being part of the bench, maybe he just didn't want to like touch on it that way or frame it that way. But I thought like we saw it immediately tonight where Marcus starts and Marcus is on Kawhi Leonard, and like that previously would have been Rui. And I just thought Marcus's on-ball defense and forcing Kawhi into certain angles, into certain spots on the floor, he did a remarkable job on Kawhi in that first quarter. Was not like Kawhi eventually went off and he just was hitting some ridiculous, he was getting to the foul line a lot, but like hitting some ridiculous contested jumpers where it was like, whether it was Smart or Laravia or Rui or whoever was on Kawhi, arm up, contesting him, he's just cashing everything. So some of that happened the last few quarters, but I thought Marcus set a tone defensively to start. There are some limitations to what he could do. Like we'll get into the starting group with one of the takeaways, but I thought it went well overall. And then DA, I think DA's numbers to me belie his actual impact. Like on the surface, you see 13 points, 7 rebounds, and a block. Played 28 minutes. I will say I disagreed with closing with him. I think he closed the final like 9 or 10 minutes of the game. I will admit, like, there wasn't a great alternative. I don't think Jackson had a great game, and I don't think the Lopez matchup was great for Jackson. I also thought we saw some of the small ball limitations for LA in this matchup with the rim pressure that the Clippers were putting on them. So, I mean, maybe with some hindsight here, like maybe it was more of a Maxey game where I think Maxey could have blended some of the switchability, the doubling on the perimeter, and some physicality against Lopez. But like JJ complimented DA and Marcus after the game. With DA, he specifically mentioned the defense. I thought he executed the doubling and the blitzing well, but it was a lot of the same. Not getting back in transition, not rotating well. He had a couple of those fouls late, giving up offensive rebounds, and Lopez scored on him multiple times, and it just kind of felt like he wasn't really there defensively. So I think had a couple of nice contests on some drives, and again, was effective in the doubling. But I thought offensively was really disappointing tonight. 5 or 10 shooting, and really 5 for 11 because he got fouled. I mean, he missed the dunk that he got fouled on, but should have still finished it. But like he had basically the 5 misses were all like wide open within 4 feet or semi-contested within 4 feet. Just like some really bad misses. And then also had a couple turnovers where he, I guess one they put on him. I think one they actually put on Luka, but just not catching the ball on the roll and the ball going out of bounds. And I just thought did not have the engagement or activity level that I would have liked tonight. Did have a couple, I will say had a couple of contested rebounds in the fourth on the defensive side, but I just think could have had a much bigger night. And it just feels like, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's just not been the same player going on a couple months now. And then off the bench, I would say relatively underwhelming performance for most of the bench. I didn't think Rui had a good game, scored 3 points, 1 for 4 shooting. And I don't, think what was that good defensively. Vando had a quiet game and pretty much only played at the 5. That the Lakers downsized a lot in this game. So he played small. They're using him DHOs and the flare screen. So they had some success with some of that. Jake had a quiet game, 3 points, only 14 minutes. Jackson, 8 points, 3 rebounds. Had a good offensive game, but I think defensively this was a little bit of a tough matchup for him. And then Luke, 9 points, 4 for 6 shooting, only 1 for 3 on threes, got some good looks, just didn't make them. But we saw him just the off ball gravity and quickness. And it was a lot of slipping screens or cuts or weak side, ball handling. And I thought he touched the paint a lot tonight in a way that was effective and important for LA's offense. In terms of stat of the night, for me, it's got to be, there's several things we could look at, but for me, the thing that stands out is the 17 threes and 55% shooting on threes. That really stood out in a big way, where the Lakers just hit so many big threes tonight. And Luka, again, hit half of them basically with 8 of the 17. But I thought the 3-point shooting tonight was a huge swing factor. Clippers only took 21 threes. So the Lakers rarely dominate the makes and volume in the 3-point battle, but it's often their opponent takes more threes and then maybe they make more if they're having a great shooting night. Tonight, they absolutely dominated the 3-point battle. And I thought that was something that really swung this game for them. And then in terms of my 3 takeaways, going to rattle through these because I've already kind of touched on some of them, but takeaway number 1 is the right starters. It took 55 games, but we are here. Those of you who are holding the stock of Marcus Smart as the 5th starter, I think we have all been proven right. All jokes aside, so I went through and calculated what I think was the plus minus of the group in its 4 shifts together, and they actually were -1 in 20 minutes, so they played beginning of the first, beginning of the third, a chunk of the beginning of the fourth, and then Rui came in for LeBron, and I think Kennard came in for Austin, and then Austin and LeBron both came in, and then they closed the final 4.5 minutes. So through the first 2 shifts, they were +4. In the fourth quarter, they were -5. Now, overall, with the starting group, we know, okay, you got the big 3 locked in. It's how do the other 2 guys fit? I am becoming more concerned with DA as the starter. I think I talked about this on the Buha's Block episode and talked about this on Lakers Collective, where it's not just the Luka, LeBron, Rui pairing or trio that has been problematic defensively. It's also the Luka, LeBron, DA pairing that has been problematic defensively, especially in comparison with Jackson. So I just think when Luka, LeBron, and DA are each at their worst defensively, they all kind of combine to have the same problems of not really getting back in transition, not rotating as the low man, not boxing out, and just sort of having an indifferent nature to defense. So this is kind of a problem that I think you could put, I was going to say Victor Wembanyama. Maybe if you put Victor Wembanyama as the 5th starter, a lot of these problems would go away. But I almost think you could put like Alex Caruso, Kason Wallace, Lou Dort, pick your favorite Thunder defender as the fifth guy here. And there's just going to be some limitations based on the other four defenders. And you could throw in Austin into that mix of like the other four guys are just collectively below average defenders, as a unit. And while I think Marcus brings a certain amount of force and energy and just defensive intensity, he can't put out all the fires that there are. So, I mean, even in that first quarter and with the first shift with the starting group, there was back cutting, like John Collins back cutting for a dunk. There was a lot of like with how the Lakers were over helping against Kawhi. There was a lot of holes there. And I think one of the issues with the starting group, especially, is like sometimes if it's Marcus and now he's part of that, but like Vando, Jake, they can help, and Jackson even, I think they can help. They'll recover quickly. Like there's sort of a continual like energy with just motor with that group or some of those groups. With the starting group, it's like they'll do the 12 good seconds of defense, 14 good seconds of defense. Eventually they're going to get, there's going to be a breakdown somewhere. It's the weak link theory, right? And there's going to be someone who messes something up, takes their eye off, their defender or whatever, and there's a breakdown there. So that's something they're really going to have to figure out. That again, it doesn't matter if it's Marcus out there, doesn't matter if it's Rui, doesn't matter if it's Jake, doesn't matter if it's Vando. Like on some level, it's got to be the other four guys like really coming together and being like, we got to be better defensively. The offense I thought was great. Like it was 18 points in 6 minutes. It was a great, to start the game. It was great offensively. They executed down the stretch. Really just was the defensive end, which I think is more of a unit type thing. But -1 in 20 minutes is better than a lot of the previous starting group had a -20 net rating in I think like 85 minutes. So you extrapolate this out into 80 minutes. I mean, this is more of like would probably be more of a like -3-ish net rating, maybe -4. So comparing like a -3 or -4 to -20, huge gap there. And I remain bullish on the starters. Takeaway number 2, full strength rotation. So again, first time we saw the rotation with Luke Kennard and Luka back. So Luka played 38 minutes. I think that's a little bit too high, but he had it going tonight. Lakers really leaned on him. Also reduced the minutes of LeBron and Austin. Austin was technically off of a minutes restriction, but it felt like he was still capped a little bit there at 33. LeBron with being questionable, dealing with the migraine. They also had his minutes a little bit lower, though I think LeBron at 33 is a sweet spot. DA at 28. I think he's going to be more of a matchup-based guy, but for me, this was a little bit too much. I don't think his play correlated with this many minutes, but JJ disagreed with that. Marcus at 29, I think that's a sweet spot for him. Rui at 26, I don't think he played that to that level tonight, but I think he typically does play to that level. And with him accepting a bench role, you got to still play him, right? And Rui has said before that minutes are, or has recently said that minutes are more important to him than whether he's starting. Vando at 10 was pretty low. They only played him in small ball. So like there was 3 different iterations of the Lakers they went with DA at the 5, Jackson at the 5, and then Vando at the 5. And you saw that in the first and third quarters where it was DA, normal rotation, Jackson in, then pulling him and then closing with Vando, then opening. I believe they opened the second quarter small. I think they also might have opened the fourth small, and then I think went back to DA in the second and fourth, and then in the second they closed with Jackson. In the fourth they just closed with DA the entire time. So look at Luke played 18. I think that was fine, especially with the offensive performance he had, though we have seen teams continually start to, continually test him defensively. And, it's something that the Lakers, they're already pretty defensively limited. And it's just something that they have to, protect him in addition to protecting several guys. But we saw there was the top 5 with the starters, then there was Rui, then there was Luke, then there was a pretty big drop off to the Jake, Vando, Jackson. So it looks, Rui's going to be the 6th man. And then it might be more of a matchup based thing, 7 through 10. But like these are the 10 guys that are in the rotation. These are the 10 guys that are going to play. I think come playoff time, one of these guys will probably be phased out, and it'll probably be between Jake Vando, probably between Jake and Vando, I guess, because like I think Luke, because of the shooting, is going to play a certain amount. But and I could honestly see it being Vando. I think like he more often than not when JJ's had a full rotation, Vando's been the 9th or 10th man, and that's just how JJ has done things. And then takeaway number 3, quickly wanted to touch on the straw poll, the MVP straw poll, which ESPN announced today. So Luka finished 5th in the voting. I had a vote. I voted for him 3rd, behind SGA and Jokic. He overall finished 5th behind SGA, Jokic, Cade, and Wemby. I had the same top 5, but not in that order. But it went SGA, Jokic, Cade, Wemby. After seeing this, I do think it's going to be really difficult for Luka to win MVP, because 11 guys got votes, and all 11 received at least one. Like everyone who received a vote received at least one 3rd place vote. And seeing like he did distance himself from, I forgot who was 6th. It might have been, I think it might have been Jaylen Brown. There was a bit of a gap there, but this is a pretty reflective voting process of how the actual vote, like he polls 100 people. I would assume at least 70, if not more, of the people actually have votes. And we've seen now the last few years, this is sort of influenced the race to a degree, but it also has been reflective of how the race is going to play out. And after seeing the lead Shea has a monster lead right now. Shea's probably going to win his 2nd straight MVP, but I think even if like he's obviously injured going into the break, we'll see how many games he misses. Jokic is right there. Jokic might get eliminated just based on missing. He can only miss one more game. Wemby's also a threat to be eliminated. But even then, Cade's been relatively healthy. He's been pretty healthy. And the gap between Cade and Luka in the voting, to me, just signifies, unless the Lakers go on an insane run here over the final 27 games and probably have to finish in the top 3 in the West, I just don't see Luka realistically having a shot at MVP right now. So I, again, don't agree with some of the criticism or the nitpicking of him and just sort of his spot in the MVP hierarchy. But I think tonight or today rather was just sort of showed like where he's at with the voters. And I just have a hard time. I mean, again, I think assuming Shea is eligible, I think is going to win. But Jokic is still right there. And then if Jokic is eliminated and maybe even Shea gets eliminated, I think then it becomes an interesting conversation between Cade and Wemby. Now, Wemby might get eliminated too, but Cade's probably not getting eliminated barring an unforeseen injury. And it looks like he will probably win if those other 3 are all out, due to the games played rule. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. First one from Mac Roblox 94. Thank you for the super chat. Finally happened. The starting lineup of Luka, LeBron, Marcus Smart, Austin, and Ayton happened. How do you feel about the starting lineup going forward? What if they start Jake over Austin? So I touched on it. So I would just like echo. I think one thing I didn't really mention. I think with the current starting group, it does really lean on the big 3 offensively, right? Because DA's sort of been phased out offensively in general and has just not been as impactful. And Marcus, I think, is, despite his ability sometimes to call his own number in like the wrong moments and look off Luka or LeBron or Austin. And like, you do need that balance, right? Of a role player playing with a certain level of confidence. I think Marcus is smart and no pun intended. And he knows like, my role with the starting group is to play defense and like I'll take open shots, but I'm not going to like, it's going to be primarily Luka. Luka has the big first quarters. Luka has his really high usage in the first quarter. And then, 3rd quarter, I think it's going to be more so who's got it going, what's the matchups that are working, like what are our advantages here, and then fourth quarter it'll probably be like more of a matchup based thing in terms of like who's closing and whatnot. But I liked the starting group overall. I also think like one other thing with it is, while I didn't agree with DA closing, again, I don't think there was like a clear alternative. And I also think there was an element of, or there is an element right now where the group just needs time together. They need reps. They need to fast track. I don't know off the top of my head how many minutes they played together. I should know that. But the fact that they played 20 minutes together tonight, to me, is like a sign that JJ, like, he wants this to work. He wants this to be the group. And they need to just get more time and continuity and familiarity together. So I think that's going to be a big point of emphasis moving forward, is like, can they get, they're going to get the six, like pretty much how the rotation has worked out. The starters play the first 6-ish minutes, barring foul trouble, of the first and the third. They didn't play together in the second, but we saw they played together for, I believe, 8 minutes in the fourth. And like JJ wants that to be a thing and work. I saw some people feel like no matter what Austin does, it still gets lumped into like, should Austin come off the bench? I think if Austin is coming off the bench, the Lakers, it's a completely different first quarter, because he was the guy who got it going. He scored their first 7 points. Then LeBron took the baton, scored 7 of 9 or 10, I think. And then Luka got going. Typically it is Luka setting the tone in the first. And again, he set the tone in the second half of the quarter. But I just think Austin's too good and too important. I think he's the Lakers' second best player. And I don't see a world in which he comes off the bench. I think at this point, maybe you make a change at the center spot eventually, but I don't see them splitting up the big three. And also, like, I mean, Austin, again, the one thing I have mentioned and haven't mentioned it as much recently, but like, part of this too is, if you want to move Austin to the bench, you can make that case and make the case of staggering him and Luka, even though him and Luka have played really well together and have played well together not only this season but last season. And the sample size with those two has been like, they've been dominant with those two on the floor. Particularly, those two without LeBron have been dominant together. But like Austin, I mean, you're about to give Austin a max contract or close to a max contract this summer and build the next iteration of this group around Luka and Austin. So I don't think it would make sense, like, from a process perspective, to be like, all right, Austin, you come off the bench for the next like 30 games and the playoffs. And then this summer, we're going to pay you $40+ million despite being a bench player in our eyes. And then we're going to promote you back to the starting group. Like, that doesn't really make sense. I think Austin, whether people agree or not, Austin is going to make $35+ million this summer, and I think closer to 40. And he's also a permanent starter in any situation and context he's in. I don't think that is going to change with the Lakers or elsewhere. The Lakers, thank you for the super chat. How was your All-Star break? Hope you got some rest. Thank you. I appreciate that. I had a great All-Star break. Saturday, spent the day with my wife for Valentine's Day. So we slept in. We are both night owls. We are both not morning people, but slept in. I had gotten her some flowers and a card and arranged that with some coffee downstairs. And then we went to, so we had like a nice kind of chill late morning. Went to see Wuthering Heights, the new movie with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Then we just chilled and cooked and hung out for the rest of the evening. And during that time, I stuck in a little bit of what's going on with All-Star Saturday night, and watched the 3-point shootout, watched the dunk contest and some of the shooting stars. But I spent most of the day with my wife. Sunday was meetup, so met up with the late night gang for the All-Star game downtown, and we watched that together and hung out for a few hours. Then Monday went out to Henderson, where my son lives, and spent Monday to Wednesday with him. Then came back late Wednesday night. So had a nice family break. Also, did Lakers Collective Monday, and then recorded an episode of Buha's Block out there in Henderson. But yeah, I would say I didn't get a lot of rest. When I'm on daddy duty, I don't get a lot of rest, but it's worth it, and I'm excited for the stretch run here. Jay, I'll just say Jay. Thank you for the super chat. Kennard looks like prime Kobe compared to Gabe. It's hard to disagree. It is, and you see now, like he's kind of getting phased out of the rotation in Atlanta, which if they're tanking, I don't know, but I guess yeah, he does. He does. Yeah, pick your favorite player, and that's what it looks like. Jay follows up again. This team is better than last year. Much more bench depth. Rui, Luke, Jake, Hayes, Vando better than DFS, Gabe, Goodwin, Vando. I agree. Now, yeah, I mean, well, yeah. I was just kind of thinking through some of these individual matchups here. I'm not disagreeing. I think I will say like the identity of last year's bench group. There was a clear like the Banshee. Like all these guys, I will like, so Vando's been better this year than last year, I would say. And I actually don't think it's particularly close. Gabe, I thought was better last year than this year as well. I thought he really tailed off this year. I think last year's version of DFS is honestly better than this year's version of Rui. And then you get into like Goodwin is just a different type of player than Luke or Jake. I think Luke and Jake are both better than Goodwin than last year's version of Goodwin. He's been pretty good this year, but it kind of depends on the night, the matchup. But overall, yeah, I mean the depth is there. The Lakers can go 10 deep. By the playoffs last year, JJ did not trust. I mean, he didn't really trust any of these guys outside of DFS. But, Gabe was the one guy he almost subbed in, of course. Goodwin and Vando, though, were phased out. And, they both got, like, a couple shifts at points of the series, but they were not full-time rotation guys anymore. So, and then, Hayes was eventually benched and then just didn't play at all until Maxey played. So, yeah, I no qualms here. I think there was a little bit more of a defensive makeup with last year's group that I think is missing with this year's group. Like if we look at Rui trends on the offensive end, Luke trends on the offensive end, Jake is kind of closer to like big average-ish in both regards. Jackson trends on the offensive end, though I think the defense has been better than last year. And then Vando, of course, is the like stopper here. But I think that group is better defensively. This group is better just overall, like two-way play and the shooting with Rui and Luke coming off the bench and Jackson being a backup rather than a starter. Like, yeah, I definitely agree with all that. And then Rude, thank you for the super chat. Do you think coaching is part of the problem here? I will. So in the macro, no. I remain bullish on JJ and talking to Pete, I'm sure some of you heard our episode last week grading the Lakers on Great Western Forum, and I gave JJ a B, and I think I was the lowest. Maybe Anthony was lower than me, definitely lower than Pete. I think he gave a B+ or an A-, if I'm not mistaken. But part of what I said was I stand by it. I was like, from a results perspective, I would probably give the Lakers an A-. I think from a process perspective, I'd probably give them a C+. Now, maybe I was a little bit harsh in the process perspective. And I think, especially with like how tonight went and just with how things have been trending, like I think the process has been much better the last like 15 or so games. I think JJ has been in his bag with the rotation, with lineups, with leaning into what works next to Luka, leaning into what works next to LeBron, to a lesser degree Austin, because Austin missed over half that stretch and then was on a minutes restriction. But he he leaned into Marcus and Jake as starters, leaned into balancing the starting group, moved Rui to the bench, been pushing a lot of the right buttons defensively. They've been a top 15 defense. The offense hasn't hit the ceiling yet, but has been around that top 10 mark. So I think JJ's been in his bag recently, but I thought it took him a while to get into his bag. And I think part of what I didn't like about the start to the season is that's definitely where I have like a big gap between the results and the process was I think they were going off of the results a little bit too much. And there were some things from a process perspective that were not going to work. And whether that was like the base switching scheme, especially with Gabe being such a big part of that, Rui as the fifth starter, I think was clearly not going to work. And we saw that play out over time, but DA kind of being locked in at like 30 to 32 minutes, regardless of his performance. We've seen JJ change some of these things and push different buttons, but I do think it took him a little bit too long to get to the starting group. I think it took him too long to start experimenting more defensively. And just, I think if he coached the full season the way he coached the last 15 or so games, I think the Lakers have at least a couple more wins. Like I would say 2 to 4 more wins on the season. Let's just conservatively give them 2 more wins. If the Lakers were 36-19, they'd be the 3 seed right now with a 2-game lead over the Nuggets in the loss column and a 1-game lead over the Rockets in the loss column. So I think at that point, we're talking about JJ as a strong coach of the year candidate. I think Mitch Johnson and JB Bickerstaff are the 2 front runners right now. Joe Mazzulla also deserves a lot of love for what he's doing in Boston, but I think JJ would be right there in that tier 2 maybe of the coach of the year race. And it's really just a matter of like 2 games, but I think that would sway the conversation completely differently with how we view the Lakers and how we feel about them. But more so for me, it'd be from like a process perspective of if they started the season with the right starting group, with some more creativity defensively and maximizing some of these lineups around the stars and some of the bench groups, it would not only be reflected in the record, I think it would just be reflected more in the discourse and how people feel about them, because that would also, to me, influence the net rating, the point differential. Like the Lakers from a record perspective are right there with the top 6, but from a statistical perspective, like most statistical models have the Lakers as the 8th best team in the West, not even like in the top 6. And I don't agree with that, but statistically you can make a strong case they are the 6th best team, and it's like not really close. And that's where I think I would like to feel better about that and be like, no, they're top 4, they're top 5, whatever. But it's just not been playing out here with how the season has gone. And I do put that on the coaching to a degree, because you look at like OKC, I just put this out in my last Buha's Block episode. I looked at all 10 teams. All 6 teams in the West, and went team by team, looked at their top 10 rotation guys based on like just my general knowledge, but also like who plays when they're healthy and what the minutes distribution is. Looked at every team's top 10 and broke it down by games missed due to injury this season. And the Thunder have missed the most games. They missed almost 30 more games than the Lakers in terms of overall. And it's not like the Lakers have had a big concentration with LeBron missing 18, Austin's missed 26, Luka's missed 12. So like they have missed a lot with the big 3, but Shea's been missing games recently. J-Dub has obviously missed a huge chunk of the season. Chet has missed games. And then Caruso, Hartenstein, Dort, AJ Mitchell, like they've had like basically, I would say their top 7 or 8 guys have all missed like real chunks of the season. Now OKC's loaded, they're deep, they're younger. It's not necessarily a fair comparison, but like they've been very injured. Denver's been very injured. Minnesota and Houston and San Antonio have been more on the healthy side, though I didn't count Fred VanVleet in my analysis. If you put Fred VanVleet in there, I didn't count him because it was before the season. If you want to say it counts, then Houston actually falls below the Lakers. But like several of these teams have been just as injured as the Lakers, have similar flaws or comparable flaws. Maybe they're not as good offensively, but they're good defensively, whatever. And they found ways to win and have a much better product in terms of blowing out teams more consistently, not having the double-digit losses. So I think some of it is on the coaching for sure. Tonight, my only gripe outside of some of the rotation stuff was like, I thought JJ went a while without calling timeouts. Oddly, like in that third quarter, the Clippers were on, and they had like a 14-2 run, and he just kept letting it happen, and then eventually called the timeout when the Lakers were down, and it was like, I think they needed a timeout like much earlier than that. But that's like a small thing. I think though in general the coaching has been solid. I remain bullish on JJ, but there are certainly some things he could do better. And I think it's interesting that in both seasons he kind of like they got the relatively quick starts. Then there were some bumps in the road, and then he kind of found his way going into like the second half of the season. And I think that's encouraging, at least that like JJ is willing to not be as stubborn, not be as headstrong, and like make some adjustments and adapt a bit. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. I dread watching Ayton the rest of the season. I'm not going to go that far, but it's not been great. And I think again, like, he's just an interesting player because he can accumulate stats, and like you'll see he'll get, I mean, tonight he had 13-7. It did not feel like a 13-7. I felt like every time I was seeing him involved outside of the incredible lob finish he had with LeBron, and you missed that dunk and made a couple free throws late. Like, it was just missing bunnies in the short roll, missing lobs, not catching the ball, getting scored on in drop, getting scored on in the post, giving up offensive rebounds, not rotating, not getting back in transition. It was just thing after thing after thing where and he got pulled a couple times. And that was the interesting thing, was like there was a couple times JJ clearly got frustrated with him and pulled him. And then he just kept, again, maybe part of this is like he's trying to fast track the starting group. I guess that's like the only thing I will entertain or accept in terms of like, I guess if you want to make that case, that's fine. But yeah, I really wonder if the Lakers are in like a game 7, or if they somehow were in the play-in, or they're in even just the playoffs, like any playoff game, but like especially like a game 5, game 6, game 7. How much is he playing, and how much is he out there in the fourth? I think those are really fair questions. Lego Team Builder, Jovan, what are your thoughts on Adu and Drew on G League Lakers game today? Had not seen. You were saying that they were with them tonight. I did not see what the South Bay result was tonight. I'm pretty like Laker games. I'm pretty, but so tonight was they're playing Texas, and then they play them again tomorrow, and I think Bronny is with them as well, right? If I'm not mistaken. So tonight, yeah, Adu. So Adu 19 points, 7 rebounds. Like to see that from Adu. 7 for 8 from the floor, 1 for 1 from at the free throw line, 2 for 5 on free throws. Drew Timme 25, 8, 4 assists. Bronny 13 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 for 14 shooting. Drew Timme 11 for 20. So the thing that really, like, Drew Timme, I think is close to a finished product at this point. Like, we know what he is, and he's got some clear strengths and some clear weaknesses. And I think he can play in double big looks. But like, it just seems like they've shifted towards, it's going to be DA, Jackson, and small ball. If they dust off a bench big deep in the rotation, it's going to be Maxey. I think Drew Timme's basic, and that's why he didn't get that 15th roster spot. With Bronny, I think we've seen some real development from him lately, and in some of the garbage time shifts he's had. I think he's looked better. But Adu is the one to keep an eye on here. If Adu, 19 points, 7 rebounds, that's impressive. I haven't seen the film yet, and I will watch that, not tonight, but tomorrow. That's notable from Adu, and I think it's probably too late for him to emerge as a rotation guy, but it does give you optimism moving forward. Connor says, you forgot to put the stream announcement in the Discord. I did. I apologize. I was crashing out, to be completely honest. I mean, my monitor right now, this is all coming off my computer, but typically I have a monitor here. For some reason, it just stopped working for some unknown reason. And then my camera, which I just was using yesterday, like retesting it out to make sure everything was cool, just completely shut off. So I was just trying to get going live. It was so late that I didn't put it on Twitter or Discord. Civic Citizen says the word you're looking for is elimination game. Yeah, elimination game. I mean, technically, like even a game one, I'm just curious where he's at. He as in DA in like the trust with JJ. Lego Teen Builder says buy a new. Well, so I mean, this is so I just bought this one, which is a new one, and is like 3 times the price of my original camera. But this one overheats. So like there's a whole thing with the mirrorless cameras where you got to get like a dummy battery, which I got for this one, but then they overheat in like 45 minutes to an hour. And I obviously go longer than 45 minutes to an hour. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to stick with the OG. But then the OG literally just not even turning on right now. So I don't know what's going on. Connor Phillips says, do you know who cursed Luka to only hit his 2s or 3s in any given game? If so, can you please tell them to lift the curse? I mean, he's had some games recently where he's been hitting both at a high level, but yeah, it's been interesting that like it's kind of been one or the other in a lot of games this season. And that has affected, I mean, like overall his efficiency balances out as solid, but it's, I mean, if he's making both, then you're just like, there's nothing you can do. And that's when he drops 50. User says, I obviously go longer than 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, Casanova. Well, if you're part of the late night gang, you're aware of, and you'll remember my Rose Sparks ad from a few months ago. Jay says, my one issue with Luka is it's just too many step back 3s that can kill the momentum at times. I think that's fair. A night like tonight, like I've said this before, but like most nights, Luka's gonna attempt double digit, like 8. If you just go through his box score, 8 is pretty much the floor in terms of 3s, and it's typically between like 8 to 12 3-point attempts. I think the double digit and like some nights he'll be 13, 14, 15. I think getting to that level, it's got to be a night like tonight where he's making, I mean, he shot 57% on 3s tonight. When he's making them like that, like shoot him, because we saw, I mean, he hit a huge one, a couple big ones in the fourth quarter, but like that big one against Dunn and was just sneering. And I love how much Luka hates the Clippers and how much he hates Chris Dunn. It's just, it's hilarious. But in general, yes, I think it can, like, off the top of my head, it's about like a 2-to-1 ratio in terms of step backs versus, or off the dribble 3s versus catch and shoot. And he is one of the best off the dribble 3-point shooters we've ever seen from like a just shot difficulty perspective. Like that step back is, it's a real weapon, but I think it again, we're talking about like degrees here. I'm not talking about like a wholesale change of like him cutting it out. It's more so, taking 4 or 5 versus taking like 8 or 9. And like the 8 or 9, I think needs to be reserved for when he's really got it going, which tonight he did. Bosnian Bear, thank you for the super chat. Shout out Yusuf Nurkic. Hey, Brate, I love the show. Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you think Ayton has a future after this Lakers contract ends? I find it more difficult to watch him as the season goes on. Yes, I think he's got the skill and the talent and the production to stick. But I do wonder what type of market he's going to have. some team I could see talking themselves potentially into giving him like partial to full non-taxpayer MLE as like a backup. Like I think he would have to accept like a smaller role in like a backup situation. But like you could argue that with how valuable size is right now in the NBA, that if you could even get a backup in that range, like it could be worth it depending on the context of your roster. So I can potentially see that, but I would also not be surprised if there is no market for him and he just is forced to opt in to staying with the Lakers and then maybe they try to flip him or something. But I think he'll stick around. I just think at this point, he's more of a backup player to me and more of a 15 to 20 minute a night backup in like an ideal role. And, I think that the ship has sailed on him being a like full-time starter on a really good team. Again, like the production is there, but when you look at, I mean, like every team kind of has a good center to a degree, right? And then you just compare him head to head to a lot of the other set. Like, I mean, the competition, I mean, if we want to rank these guys, let's rank the 6 starting centers in the West. You got Jokic, you got Wemby, you got Şengün, then you got Gobert, and then you get to, I mean, if you want to put Chet in there, I think he's a little bit higher, but we'll even say Hartenstein. Then I think there's a bit of a gap, and then you get to DA, and I also think that's reflected in their respective salaries. Like Hartenstein's making almost 4 times as much money as him. So yeah, I think he's trending toward like longer term being a backup. Finn asked, prefer JaVale McGee or DeAndre Ayton? There's some similarities between them. Honestly, especially factoring the contract, I would go, especially on this team, JaVale. I think JaVale would I mean, Luka throwing lobs to JaVale. User says DA is probably the best $8 million center in the league, not on a rookie contract. That is a good question that I'm now curious. I'm looking up on Basketball Reference. So let's say we're in the $8 million range. So DeAndre Ayton, I mean, technically is making, remember he's making still the buyout money, but we'll $8 million. Guys in this range: Kevon Looney, Jock Landale. I will still take DA. I mean, I guess in terms of non-rookie scale guys, yeah. I mean, it's nuts. Brook Lopez is making more than him. I actually thought Brook Lopez outplayed him tonight overall, but I wouldn't go as far as to say I'd take Brook Lopez over him. I mean, to your point, yeah. I also think though, like this to me is kind of a sign that, like, especially on a Luka team, you don't really want to have an $8 million setter unless it is a Derek Lively who's on a rookie scale contract, right? Like, I mean, of course, if you can find a bargain and get someone to take a discount, but like in general, basically every other, I mean, I just mentioned like Denver has Jokic and they just invested in adding Jonas Valanciunas and like, spending real stuff or whatever, like investing to add and solidify the center spot. OKC has the double center group. Houston has the double center group. Remember, a lot of people thought they overpaid for Steven Adams when they added Steven Adams on that deal, but with the extension, Minnesota has gone all in on the bigs and has Gobert and Naz Reid. And then San Antonio has Wemby and also had one of the best moves of the offseason in adding Luke Cornett. I guess Luke Cornett would be the guy. I think he's making a little bit more. He's in that, I don't know. Luke Cornett's making 11. I think he's better than DA, but that's $3 million more. Eric, do we see Kennard closing playoff games? I think it depends on the matchup. and their ability to target him effectively. I would say in general, probably not, because I don't love Cornet plus the big three defensively, especially in like if we're talking closing a playoff game, it's obviously a close game, right? Like if you're closing a game, right, like inherently it means that it is a close competitive game, and I just don't think you could get enough stops. Now, maybe Marcus or Vando or Jake is the fifth guy in the lineup. They're going small and they're just like, screw it. We're going to be scrambling and playing small ball. Again, it really depends on the opponent. Off the top of my head, I don't like it against Denver. I don't like it against the teams with size and the teams that have a certain amount. Like the Lakers are still a bad off-ball defense team that can really struggle with teams that can pass and cut and are constantly moving. We saw them play the JV Warriors and they could barely guard them. So I would say Denver. I think Minnesota would be problematic with their size and athleticism and like offensive rebounding. And we've seen that movie before. Houston might not be able to make them pay with their offense, but like the offensive rebounding would concern me. San Antonio actually could be one that they could potentially get away with it if he's just on like a shooter defensively. And they're not really a team that I think is gonna we don't switch him on to Wemby. That would be my first piece of advice, as we saw the Lakers do a few games ago. Then OKC, I don't really like. I know he closed against OKC in the last, but that game they had some really bad defensive stretches there down the stretch. So yeah, I don't view him as, but I think he's going to be in the rotation. I think he's going to be in the top probably 7 or 8 in the rotation, and he'll get his 15 to 20 minutes. But I just think, again, this goes back to like the entire conversation about the starting group and like what the Lakers need around the big three. The big three are a giant plus offensively and a giant minus defensively. You cannot afford to put another big minus defensively, in this case in Kennard, like next to them. I think it's got a basic, like the fourth perimeter guy to me almost exclusively has to be Marcus, Jake, or Vando. I think those are the three, the three options. Rui and Luke have to play in different lineups. Okay, I see. Sorry for missing your super chat, Sarah. Anyway, we steal a win over the Celtics. I think it's certainly possible. I think that the Lakers are going to be, I would assume, would be underdogs going into that game from a line perspective. But it is Pat Riley's statue unveiling, and I think that in and of itself is, it's Lakers Celtics. If you're a Laker, you got to show up for this game. You got to take it seriously. Then you add in Pat Riley's statue unveiling, which is happening a few hours before the game. Then you add in, it's a huge game in terms of, just again, like Lakers Celtics, but it's a primetime NBC game. It's a big game from this is the best team the Lakers have played in a little bit here, and just a nice, I think, test for them. So I would assume they're going to enter that game as underdogs by at least a couple points, or maybe I think it'll be a relatively close line. And I only referenced, you guys know I don't gamble, but I only reference the lines just out of I'm always curious as to how Vegas views a matchup and sort of who's the favorite and who's the underdog. But I think the Lakers I would say it's a pretty close to 50-50 game. I think the one thing that'll be interesting to see is Boston. We saw them absolutely shred the Lakers in that game in Boston in that first quarter, and then LA progressively played better. But on paper, a team that plays their style of play, takes as many threes as they take, but also wins the margins a lot. They don't turn the ball over. They're good at offensive rebounding, and they take a bunch of threes. They typically are winning the possession game and the 3-point battle. It's going to be a nice test for LA. I think I will say I think they need to play a lot better than they did tonight. Like the Clippers are better than their record, but as I said, they traded two of their best three players, second night of back-to-back tonight. Like they were playing some guys that it just like they shouldn't have been as competitive against the Lakers, in my opinion. So the Lakers, I think, are going to have to play like their best game in at least a couple of weeks. Well, I guess we factor in the break, like several weeks against Boston to win. Huge Casino says, good night, babe. I'm going to sleep now. Good night. Hope you get some rest. Going to go about 10 more minutes here to the 1:30 mark. Connor asks, will the Pat Riley statue be better than the Wade statue? Yes, it's almost impossible for a statue to be as bad as the Wade statue. Huge Casino says, oh my God, you're still awake. You need your sleep, babe. So that was earlier. I guess we have a fan here in Huge Casino. I appreciate it. Jay says that Jovan, give me your best path for LA to make a run to the Western Conference Finals. First round matchup and second round matchup. What do you think? Who do you think LA could face and beat? I actually have been thinking about this, and I'll give you the path. And it's actually, I think, a semi-realistic path. My path for LA to make the Western Conference Finals goes like this. The seeding ends up being 1 San Antonio, 2 OKC, 3 Denver, 4 LA, 5 Houston, 6 Minnesota. Lakers play the Rockets in round 1. Lakers have home court. They beat them in the 4-5. Then they play San Antonio in round 2. They beat them because San Antonio's young and experienced, unproven. They go through their, the Lakers help off the right guys. San Antonio has a bad shooting series. Whatever. Luka has a great series, and they win that. Then they likely, I would say almost certainly lose in the conference finals, most likely to OKC. I think that's probably, and I guess there's a different version of this where it's like they're in the 3-6. I think 3 is going to be tough for them. I just think they have to start playing better to really be a threat for the 3 seed. So maybe they end up as the 6 seed and they upset like Houston has the easiest remaining schedule of the top 6. So maybe Houston improbably turns their season around, ends up as the 3 seed. Lakers are the 6. They pull off the 3-6 upset. Then they play San Antonio in round 2. They beat San Antonio. I think that's the path. I think if they're in the 4-5 and OKC's there, or they're in the 3-6 and OKC's there, I think OKC is going to beat them. And then Denver, to me, it just depends on which version of them. Are they fully healthy or not? Because I mean, like Aaron Gordon's hamstring might be like the most important body part for the West playoff mix. But I think Houston, San Antonio, like, to be honest, I don't love any of the matchups for LA. Like, I think OKC is, I mean, we've seen how their defense has disrupted LA. I thought Shea did absolutely like whatever he wanted against the Lakers in the first matchup. They can go big, they can go small, they're deeper. They've got the best defensive perimeter group in the league to throw at the Lakers stars. And I think they're really well coached. San Antonio has been maybe the best team in the West over the last like 3 months, probably. And I think Stephon Castle does there's no Luka stopper because Luka's going to be Luka and do whatever he wants ultimately. But I think Stephon Castle's on the short list of best Luka defenders in the league. And then you add in Wemby, you add in Fox, who's also always been like a matchup problem for the Lakers. Their shooting, their two-way play, they aren't experienced and unproven, but there's a lot of athleticism there and speed and youth. Denver, I think, is one of the, Denver and OKC are the only two teams that their best player can look at Luka and match or potentially surpass him in a series. I don't think any other players can say that. But then they have the institutional knowledge that they have. They have the best offense in the NBA, despite being one of the most injured teams in the NBA. And actually, when they've had their full group for a small sample size, they've been really good defensively. So they've been bad defensively in the full season, but because they've been so depleted, when they're healthy, they're actually a pretty good defense. Just can they get healthy? Houston, we saw what they did to the Lakers on Christmas. They're big, they're athletic, they're tough. Now they lost Steven Adams. They obviously don't have Fred VanVleet. Then you go to Minnesota, who Lakers beat them twice early in the season. One of those times, both teams were depleted. But I think this version of Minnesota recently is a much different team, and they would give the Lakers a lot of problems. So I think if they beat someone in round one, it's probably Minnesota or Houston. And then if they beat someone in round two, I mean, maybe you could say they play Houston in round one, Minnesota in round two. I would, if I'm ranking right now the opponents from most beatable to least, in my opinion, I would put them Houston 1, Minnesota 2, San Antonio 3, Denver 4, OKC 5. So I think it's unrealistic to probably play Houston and Minnesota, but if you could play one of those two, then San Antonio, I think that's the path. Now, to be clear, I think the Lakers are probably underdogs in both series, so I'm not saying they're going, but I think like that's the path. If it's San Antonio round one and like OKC in round two, I think they're not getting past round two. So that's my breakdown of the playoff mix. Jim Lawson says San Antonio better than OKC. We'll see. I mean, they've had their number all season, and it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I just think if you go through, especially, I think San Antonio has a chance to win a championship with this core. But if you look at the last couple or a couple of recent examples of great young teams that arrived a little bit earlier than expected, Golden State took their lumps. They lost in round two to San Antonio back in 2013. 2014, they went to 7 with the Clippers in round one. In 2015, they finally had the breakthrough, win the championship. OKC, remember, lost in the first round a couple years ago, lost in round two to Dallas. And I forgot who they lost to in round one. Was it Minnesota? I don't remember who they lost to in round one a couple years ago. Then lost to, or 3 years ago, then lost to Dallas. Then last year in the second round, then last year made the jump, made the finals and won the title. So that's kind of how these things go. You rarely see a team fully put it together in their first postseason together. So I think for San Antonio, I mean, I was actually talking to someone about this earlier today at the game. It's like, it's kind of crazy how their expectations have changed. Like, go back to the preseason forecasts for San Antonio. Most people had them in the play-in. Almost nobody had them as a top 6 seed. So like, from that perspective, I think San Antonio, like, making the playoffs and even like winning a round is probably a success of a season. But now that they've been so dominant and are a top 2 seed and could potentially even be the 1 seed, the expectations have shifted where it's like, could they make the conference finals? Could they make the finals? Like, it's possible. But I think, to me, I still think OKC and a healthy Denver are the 2 best teams in the West and in the league. Connor Phillips, how do the KD burner comments stack up with the stuff you've heard players say off the record? I like this question. I would say a lot of players. Let me be clear here, because I'm not going to say a lot of players co-sign what KD said, because I don't know that to be true, but I would say a lot of players speak more freely like that when they're not in front of a microphone. So that type of language, like, that's another reason why I believe it. Like, one, it like checks out with basically everything we've seen from KD online. 2, he did not deny it. It just straight up non-denial. Just didn't want to talk about it. And then 3, my experience of talking to players and like what players will actually say. Like, I've talked about it, talked about it last year, but I've been doing that when I was at The Athletic, would do the anonymous player survey where you talk to a player off the record, or it's on the record, but off the record in terms of their name's not on it, and then ask them like 25 questions. And even that, so I would do probably like a third of the Lakers locker room, somewhere between like a third to a half of the Lakers locker room. And just in talking to players in that context, and that's even like, again, kind of on the record, because we're not going to put their name on it, but we are going to use the quotes if they say something notable, the things that they would say about some other players and like, yeah. So I think a lot of guys talk similarly to how KD was talking in the DMs. It's just, they're smart enough to not have a burner or not get caught with the burner, or just not say these things in like random group chats the way that KD, allegedly was saying it. So, but yeah, a lot of players speak like that. So that's a more raw, unfiltered, they're not as polished and professional as you see in like the press conferences. Who says, hey, Jovan, love from India. Don't you, Luka is the most hated among all the top stars in the league, adding to Lakers hate also. I'm going to assume you meant, don't you think Luka is the most hated? Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the Luka dislike, I would say, from media into fans. And like, I think you add it to the Lakers and I mean, look, LeBron has dealt with a lot of the same stuff over the last 8 years being with the Lakers. So I think part of it is you add a polarizing player to the Lakers and they're just going to get a lot of attention, both positively and negatively. But with Luka, it does feel like a lot of the conversation and discourse is just what he can't do or what he doesn't do versus what he can do. And again, I've stated this before. I understand some people don't like the heliocentric nature, and whether it's Luka, whether it's James Harden, whether it's whoever, they don't like seeing a guy handle the ball for 37 to 40% of his team's offensive possessions. And for some people, that's just not aesthetically pleasing. And if that is how you feel, then everyone has their basketball proclivities, and people are entitled to feel however they want. But it just does feel like with him, a lot of the production and just an impact, because it's not, with some guys it's production and it's empty production, but with Luka, I think there's a proof of concept here. There's a track record, conference finals, all the first team All NBAs he's had. I think he's a playoff riser, and the stats back that up. Even last year with the Lakers, I think he was better in that Wolves series than people gave him credit for. And a lot of his numbers were impacted by that game 3 where he was sick and still played through it. So I don't know. I get that Luka's not everyone's cup of tea, but it feels like it's like instead of ordering something else on the menu, people like order the tea and then they throw it on the ground and they stomp on it and they, or throw it back at the barista. It's like, just, I don't know. I think that the Luka discourse gets a little out of hand. Art and Kim, thank you for the super chat. Luke's defense doesn't look as bad as portrayed. I think that's a fair point. I would say I don't think he's a bad defender. I think he's a physically limited defender, and especially he's just like, honestly, I mean, I think there's some similarities with Austin. I think Austin's overall a better defender and also a less physically limited defender. But I think there's an element of just, if you get him in a certain matchup, a guy can just rise up over him or hit him with a shoulder, create that separation. And that's what Kawhi was trying to do tonight. So I don't think he's like, I don't think he's Dalton level bad on defense, but and Dalton's got a lot more physical tools and gifts than Luke has defensively. But overall, like, I mean, most defensive metrics paint him as like a bottom 15th percentile defender. I don't think he's a good defender. I think he's a smart defender, and I think he's got like good intentions. He's just, if we're being honest, he's like 6'4", 190 pounds. And unless you're an athletic freak with those dimensions, there's just a limitation to how good you're going to be defensively. So I think, but to your point, I think sometimes teams targeting him as much as they do makes it seem like he's a worse defender, to your point. But I think he's a smart defender, right? And he'll stab at the ball on drives. And I think he rotates, and it's just, again, 6'4", 190, you're going to get pushed around by a lot of dudes, and he just is going to lose against most opponents. He's going to lose at least 4 of the 5 physical battles. And like the one guy he might win the physical battle with is like a small point. Like, I don't know, Fred VanVleet, if Fred VanVleet was available, but even then he's like stronger than Luke. So it's just, he's at a physical disadvantage in basically every matchup he's in. And that's just, that limits you defensively. And last one here from Gary Singh. Thank you for the super chat. Watch Lakers play defense is hilarious. Switch so much so don't have to move their feet. Can't close games with DA. Doesn't do dirty work. Hayes better. Hilarious is maybe the most positive way to say, to describe the Lakers defense. I mean, I was painful, eyesore, frustrating. There's a lot of words you could use to describe the Lakers defense. I mean, the switching, I get the switching, and JJ actually, I'll give him credit for saying this pregame. He was asked about this. He's been asked about the zone a million times now. He was asked about the zone, and he's like, I'll say this: if we had OKC's defenders, we would not be playing zone. And the point was, like, just because of the Lakers personnel, he feels like they have to switch as much. They have to play zone because, one thing I hit on in my Buha's block episode is that going into tonight, the Lakers ranked 7th in points per possession allowed in zone possessions. So top 7 defense in zone, 25th in man-to-man. So the Lakers can't guard anybody. And you look at the bottom teams below them, they're all lottery teams. They're all bad teams. So like the Lakers are in pretty bad company with their man-to-man defense. They can't guard anybody in man. That's why they've had to play zone and also switch so much to try to prevent dribble penetration. I'm largely with you at this point. I think DA has to earn the close. He can't just be penciled into close. I think he's got to earn it. Tonight, I don't think he earned it, but I give it a little bit of a pass because I think they're trying to get more minutes with the starters. But I would agree that I think Jackson's been the better big for the last like 6 to 7 weeks. No pun intended. But appreciate you all. Ended up going almost 10 minutes over as we do here on the block. Apologies for the camera stuff. I'm trying to get this all worked out. And again, it's not even just the camera. My monitor is wigging out. So technology did not want me to stream, but there is nothing they could do to keep me off of here. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me. I will be back Sunday evening. It'll be an earlier stream because of the 3:30 game. But Sunday evening after Lakers Celtics, huge game for the Lakers. I think this is a great test for them. And to me, if they could beat Boston on Sunday, that's on the short list of best wins of the season, like full stop. Boston has been playing great, and they also test the Lakers in some ways that, like, Lakers 3-point defense is not good. They don't close out well. They don't rotate well. It's going to be a real test for them based on Boston's style of play. But appreciate you guys. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back Sunday. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to the chat. I will talk to you all after Lakers Celtics.